Welcome to the budget cycle webinar. I believe this is a very good time to do this session because a lot of you who are working in your companies might be thinking about the budget at this time, which is usually the month of August, September, October is when the budgets get prepared in most organizations. I think it's a good time to do this webinar. Before I start, we have 30 plus people here in the webinar. So I will just ask you one or two questions. You let me know the answer so that based on that, I can decide on how fast or how slow I will go during the webinar. So let me know how many of you are working in FP&A teams. Type me in the chat box if you're working in FP&A. Okay, so I see one person responded, Saket. Okay, Gopal is working in. Okay, Ganesh is in transition from R2. Jay is working in FP&A. Okay, okay. So I see quite a few of you are working in FP&A. Lakshmi is in EPM. Okay, Chetan is in Treasury. Okay, Varun is in FP&A. Sayed is partially in FP&A. Okay, now I want you to type if you have worked on a budget cycle before, right? Or if you have ever been a part of an annual operating plan, type budget in the chat box so that I know out of the 30 people, how many of you have worked on the budget. Okay, so I see quite a few of you typing budget. So still, I would say about half of you have not worked on the budget or are not worked in the FP&A. So what I'll do is I'll keep going as per the normal speed. However, if you want me to stop or have a question, you can let me know in the chat box or raise your hand. Okay. Before that, I'll do a quick introduction. So for those of you who are seeing me for the first time, my name is Asif Masani. I've been working in finance for about 15 years now. And in the first 13 odd years, I worked in the corporate in FP&A roles for various organizations, including Citi, Pfizer, Coursera. Most recently, I was the lead at Coursera for India and APAC. And that's when in 2023, we decided, me and Dhawal, my co-founder, decided to start FP&A Professionals Institute. And it has been about 2 years since we have been training people in finance and FP&A. So that's a little bit about me. Over the last 2 years, or I would say 3 years, I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of experts across US, Middle East, Europe. And what we try to do at FP&A Professional Institute is we try to bring in all of those expertise, not just me and Dawals, but all of the expertise that we get through our books, through our courses, and through our certifications in FP&A. That has been our objective. And we've trained more than 5,000 students across all of these different courses that you see on the screen. So that is a little bit about me and FP&A Professional Institute. With that, we'll get started with the today's agenda. So I'll be covering three topics today. Mostly it'll be about the budget. So what and why is budgeting important? We'll quickly cover that since I see most of you know about the budget and you worked in the NA teams before. Budget planning. So there are three phases that we'll be covering: budget planning, execution, and consolidation reviews. I'll be talking about each of these phases. Since some of you have already worked in FP&A and budgets before, I would love to know your experience as well, and you could share your outcomes or your experiences of working in the budget cycle or the annual operating plan process as well. Okay, so with that, we'll get started. A quick introduction about what FP&A team does. If you have read one of my books, you would have seen this bridge before. So it is the bridge between the business teams like sales, marketing, operations, engineering, and the senior management, which is CEO, CFO, and one level below the CEO. So FP team acts as a bridge between the business teams and the senior management. And if you pick up any of the functions that the team performs, be it budgeting, management reporting, be it presentations, be it forecasting, right? So they would be in most cases interacting with the business teams and then putting forward their perspective in front of the senior management. So they are acting as a bridge between the business teams or the functional teams and the senior management. Okay, so today we'll be covering the budgeting function. However, in FP&A there are four key functions: budgeting, forecasting, and then you have analysis, which mainly includes analysis on variances and profitability. However, today's focus will be on the budgeting aspect of the FP&A. Okay, so quickly, a typical monthly calendar. I usually cover this in detail in one of my other webinars, so I'll just quickly go over this. So usually what happens in FP&A is in the first week of the month, you usually work on closing the books with the accounting team and then reporting on the management reports that are required by different teams in your company or different businesses that require different reports. FP&A team would typically ship those reports or prepare those reports, analyze those areas, and then send it to the different business teams. First week is usually management reporting. Second week, in most organizations, if they're doing forecasting on a monthly basis, then it would be updating the forecast and then getting the business reviews done with the updated forecast. Third week is more of analysis, ad hoc projects. A lot of teams spend time on automation. Then there is risk and opportunity. Once you have submitted the forecast, then you still continue looking at the forecast for any major changes that have happened from the previous submission. And then again, week 4 is preparation for week 1, where you are rolling forwarding the models. You're preparing the files that are required for the week 1, and basically you get into the week 1. We get into the preparation mode for the next cycle. So this is a typical FA monthly calendar. However, you don't see the budgeting process here anywhere. The reason being that budgeting is not a monthly or a weekly exercise. It happens once in a year. So typically that happens during the time of August, September, October in most organizations, which have Jan to December as their reporting period or their financial year. So we'll be talking about the budgeting process more in detail today. So what is budgeting? Budgeting is typically, in most organizations, the senior management and the CEO will have a long-term vision where they would want to take their company in the next 3 years or next 5 years. And what the budget does is it translates that long-term vision into an annual business plan, or I would say a P&L for the next financial year, to be keeping it simple. Okay, so it is a projection for the next financial year where you are translating the long-term vision into numbers for the next financial year. So yeah, projected. Yeah, that's right. A lot of companies have different names for it. So a lot of people call it with different names. Some of the common names of the budget are commitment, targets, plan. Okay, so these are typically used interchangeably by many different companies or many different teams. Okay, so this is a little bit about budgeting. What I would do is I would introduce to you the budgeting cycle, which is what we are going to cover in detail in the next half an hour or so. So there are three phases: planning stage, execution stage, and the consolidation and review stage. We'll talk about each of the stages one by one. I'll take a pause in between, see if there are any questions, and then we'll move on to the next stage. So that is what we will be doing in the next 30 minutes or so. Okay, so let's start with the planning stage. Before we go into the planning stage, I'll take a quick pause and see if there are any comments, questions in the chat box. Okay, so we talked about the introduction to FP&A and what is budgeting, why budgeting is important, and now we are getting into the annual operating plan cycle or the annual budgeting cycle. Okay, especially for the people who are not working in FP&A. This is a good chance to ask any questions you have so far before we get into the budget cycle. Okay, I don't see any questions in the chat box, so we'll keep moving. So I'll talk about the planning stage first, which is the first phase in the annual budget cycle. Okay, again, in the planning stage, I usually break it down into two parts. First is development of budget guidelines, and we will talk about the second one after we talk about the first. So in the planning stage, usually there are two steps. Usually what happens is you first prepare a detailed guideline on what are the rules of the entire project or entire budgeting cycle, right? Who will be doing what responsibilities will be managed by which people in the team, and also what will be the timelines, what will be the mode of submission, which templates to use, all of these usually, and what are the rules, right? There might be some rules that the company might be might or the any teams may want the team's business side to follow while they are working on the budget. Usually, it is a collaborative activity or a collaborative effort between the business teams and the FP&A or the finance team. There should be some certain rules and regulations that can help this entire project to happen in a very smooth and I would say in an efficient way. Okay, so I'll give you some examples of the budget guidelines and I'll take a pause and I will see if you have seen any more examples. Okay, so again, these are not exhaustive list of guidelines. This could be very different in your organization. I'm just sharing some of the guidelines that I have seen in my few cycles or budgeting cycles that I have worked on in 3 or 4 different organizations. Okay, so I'll be sharing some examples of the budget guidelines, and you let me know if you have seen this also in your organization, and if not, is there anything you want to add to this? Okay, so one of the budget guideline could be, again, these are examples, could be that the budget numbers should be submitted using the provided Excel files or the templates only to maintain consistency. So it is not okay if the business teams or the function teams submit the numbers in whatsoever format they want. Okay, it has to be submitted in a format that is approved and that is being provided to them by the finance and the FP&A team. Okay, that could be one of the guidelines. Okay, detailed justification must be provided for any variances from the previous year budget. Okay, so if they are asking for, mostly this is more in case of expenses. So if they are asking for more money from the previous year over and above the inflation or over and above the volume related change, if there is a significant difference between the money that they are asking, there should be some sort of a justification for that particular budget that they are asking for. Okay. Any adjustment to the budget after submission must be approved by somebody in the organization. Okay, so it cannot happen that they submit the budget numbers and then after 2 days they come back and say we'll have a revision in the submission. That can be done, however it has to be done with somebody's approval and it has to be done on a milestone. I would say there should be some checkpoints where those revisions should be allowed, and any adjustments after submission it should be approved by somebody in the organization. Okay, departments must submit a formal request for budget adjustments with justification. Again, very similar. I'll not be going into the details of each and every guidelines. It is more of an example for you to understand how you could drive or how you could draft your budget guidelines if you are in the process of setting up the annual operating plan. Okay, ensure the right phasing of expenses. A lot of time, what happens is the business teams will give you the expenses on a yearly basis as a whole number or as a full year number. However, they will not give you the monthly and the quarterly breakup properly. Okay, they will put everything equally throughout the 12 months, or they might not phase it properly, or they might not give you the breakup. So ensure that the phasing is correct. Okay. Any what happens to any unused budget after the month end or
Okay.
the quarter? Okay. So what do you want to do if there is any unutilized budget after the month end or after the quarter end? Would that budget be allowed to be carried forward in the next month? Would that budget go back to somebody in the corporate team? Okay, so all those are rules that you have to decide before you start the budgeting process. Again, these are some examples. There could be hundreds of other such examples. And if anybody has seen any other budget guideline example, feel free to drop that in the chat box. Okay. So we looked at the first, I would say the first part of the planning stage, which is the budgeting guidelines. Now we move on to the second part, which is also an important part. So after looking at the budgeting guidelines, the next part comes is the budgeting calendar or the budgeting timeline, which we will look at in the next slide. Okay, so preparing a budgeting calendar and the timelines and also preparing the budgeting templates are also part of the planning stage. Okay, so what we usually do is we think about budget like an important life event. Okay, so an important event in your life. How would you treat that particular event? So can you give me some examples of an important life event in the chat box? Okay, something which is very important to you in your personal life, obviously not talking about the company. Okay, divorce, somebody is saying, which is important, which is unusual. Marriage, okay, marriage. A couple of people are saying marriage. What else? Wedding anniversary is important. Alex is saying that. Okay, which is important. Child planning is important. Okay, so let us take an example of marriage and higher studies. Okay, so those are some recurring uh, themes that I see. Okay, so think about your. So for those of you who are married, think about your marriage. It was not that you decided to turn up on the day of the marriage and you went through the entire process, right? It involved. It usually involves months and weeks of planning. I would say more than weeks, right? It would be months of planning. Or let's take an example of the exams, right? Some important exam that you're giving. Okay, higher studies, right? So if you're giving an exam for your uh, uh, if you're giving your exams for your CA or any profession exam, you would be preparing it on a on advance. So very similarly, budgeting is an important corporate event, and I would say it is one of the most important event in the annual calendar of the company or in the event in the life of the company, which is an annual. You can consider it as a birthday, or right, or whatever it is. Right? It's an important event for the organization, and typically there is months and months of preparation. So similar to how do you prepare for an exam, you typically keep some time for preparation of material, then you go through the revision, then you have mock exams, then you finally give your final exams, right? So that is how also the companies would usually think about this event. Okay, so let me give you the example in the form of a timeline. Okay, so let's say the 15th of December every year is the birthday, or it is the day when the board approves the company's budget, or the board meets on that day to approve the company's or to review the company's budget and then give the approval. Okay, so they say, for example, that is 15th of December. Okay, now what will happen is we'll take this 15th of December as a as a as our important date, and we'll start working backwards towards all the things that are required to be able to plan properly for this particular event. Okay, so to make sure that the 15th of December review happens in the best possible manner. Okay, what will happen is CEO and CFO, or CEO will tell the CFO that I need to review the budget at least 3 weeks ahead of time or 1 month ahead of time before it goes for the board approval, so that I can make sure that everything is right. And if there are any changes required, we have enough time to make those changes. Okay, so CEO will tell the CFO, I want to review the budget by 15th of November, which is roughly 3 to 4 weeks before the board approval or the board review. Okay. Now, for that to happen, what the CFO will tell the team is, I want the consolidated budget ready with all the internal reviews done by 30th of October, so that I can present the CFO, or I can present the CEO the budget on the 15th of November. Okay. So this is the instruction given to the by the CFO to the FP&A team. Now, FP&A team has to make sure that all the budgets are consolidated and internally reviewed by 30th of October. Okay, that means that they have to make sure that the individual departments reviews are done. All the consolidations are done after the individual department reviews. The draft budget is reviewed by internally all the business teams and all the FP&A teams internally, and they are happy with all the changes, and whatever the adjustments are required, they make sure that all those adjustments have been made before it goes to the CFO. Okay. Now, for all of this to happen by 30th of October, then they'll need to be the preparation to be done maybe 1 month or 1.5 months ahead of time. So that is where the planning stage will come, where you have to prepare the templates, have the meetings and discussions, share these budget guidelines with the different business teams, make sure that the departments are ready with the training and whatever the guidance is required for the budget, entire budget submission process. Make sure the templates are ready, make sure the templates have been tested, make sure the templates are sent to the team ahead of time. And that is where the planning stage comes, which is what we are discussing right now. So in the planning stage, you have the budget guidelines and the templates and the budget calendar, which is what we are looking at right now. So if you start in the month of August, in most big organizations, it usually takes 2 to 3 months to complete the entire budgeting cycle. Although because of technology and because of I would say with the help of automation, a lot of these things can be done nowadays maybe in a span of 2 months. However, it doesn't mean that the companies are working on this for the entire 2 months. There are other things that are happening in between. For example, if it is a listed company, at the end of September there might be earnings review that might happen in October. The entire finance team would be busy with the earnings review that goes to the street, and then for 2 weeks nobody will be able to work on the budget. So it doesn't mean that the company is working or the team is working on the budget for the entire 3 months. It is happening in bits and pieces over the period of 3 months. Then you have your normal FP calendar that we just saw 5 minutes back. That also happens every month. So budget process continues parallelly, and it goes over the period of 2 to 3 months in most organizations. Okay. So this is how the calendar looks like in many organizations. I'll take a pause here, see if there are any comments, any questions before we go to the next phase, which is the execution phase. Okay, I don't see anything in the chat box, so I am hoping everything is okay, and we can move to the next stage. Okay, before getting into the next stage, I also wanted to talk about the budget templates, right? So a lot of you usually ask me when they how do we prepare the budget templates and how do the budget templates look like. So maybe I'll just give you one example of how one of the sample templates could look like. Okay, so again, this is not a exhaustive example. This is just to give you a feel of how it could look like in one of the situations. Okay, so before I get into the budgeting template, I'll talk about the situation, and then I'll talk about what is the what is happening in the FP&A team. Okay, I'm waiting for the file to open up. Just give me a moment. Okay, so before I get into the Excel file, I'll give you some background about this organization. Okay, so this is a manufacturing organization which is manufacturing ice creams. Okay, so ice cream manufacturing is a business of the organization, and what I'm sharing with you is a sales template that goes out to the different sales managers in the organization. Okay, so this is what I'll be talking about. Okay, so I am only talking about the sales part in the template. Okay, so what will happen is, first of all, you would create a template which requires some amount of historical data. So you will most likely give the business teams the historical data for the previous year. In this case, the previous year is 2024. So you're giving them the historical volume data in this case. Okay, so you're giving them what was the historical volumes ordered by the different for the different products, for the different channels, for the different sales managers in the team. Okay, so you're giving them the historical data, and also you're giving them the previous year. In this case, this is the so let me walk you through the template step by step. Okay, so let's assume that we are doing this only for one sales director. Okay, so let me first save this so that I can make changes. Okay, so I'll just filter one of the sales directors. Okay, so for example, I'll filter one of the sales director that I want to speak to in my next meeting that I have maybe in 1 hour from now. I'll look at this template. Okay, so these are the fields that you have. What are the channels? Which product? Which flavor? Then you have some other fields that you may want as information for that particular right, for that particular area. Then you have the budget. 2025 budget cases, which is going to be filled by, so this is usually going to be blank, and this will be filled, I would say this would be blank, and this would be filled by the sales person. You'll give them the actual information or previous year information, and also you will give them the actual sales value of the previous year. Okay, so the sales value will be volume multiplied by pricing. Okay, so somewhere in the template you will also give them the pricing and the discount information, which they can use to come and arrive at the revenue number or the gross sales number for the budget year. So they would fill up the volume data, and based on the pricing and the volume data, then you can arrive at the revenue number for that particular team or that particular person. And you would send this template to different sales team. For example, Alfredo is one leading one sales team. You would send this template to different sales managers or sales directors, and each of the sales director will sit with their team, update this template and send it back to you. Maybe after a week, you will have 20 different templates that you'll have to consolidate, put together all the volume data. You already have the pricing data. Based on the volume and the pricing data, you would then put together the revenue for that particular budget period or that particular next year. Again, this is an example for sales or the revenue side. In this particular case, in this particular instance, it also depends on which area you are working on and what industry you're working on and what is the setup of the company. So this is one example that I wanted to share of the budgeting templates, how do you distribute it and how do you get it back. Also, in many companies nowadays, you would be using FP&A tools or ERPs to consolidate. You don't do it manually. So it could be a hybrid of Excel templates and the tool. So you would be giving them the templates and then ask them to upload the template in the budgeting tool. Okay, so that could also be the case. Or even better, they could be getting access to they would be having access to the budgeting tool, and they would themselves be updating these information in the budgeting tool, which is what everybody should be moving to, or if most of the organizations are moving to, who are in doing the budget, so that everybody can get away from Excel and then do the entire budgeting process in the FP&A tool. Okay, so this is one example I wanted to share. So I'll take a look at the chat box before going to the next topic. Can you please share the template? Okay, I will share the template. So let me share the template at the end of this end of this session. Okay, I'll share it in the chat box. Okay, have you done for any hospital? No, I have never worked in the healthcare industry. I have never worked it on any, but I have seen a lot of hospital budgets being done by different people. Right, I have had a opportunity to look at it, but I've never worked on it. Okay, understood so far. Thanks for the template. Okay, all right. So we'll go to the. I don't want to get you lost in the template right now, so that's why I'll give it to you at the end of the session. But let me come back to the slides, and we'll go to the second stage, which is going to be quicker. Okay, so this is another example of the budget cycle, which okay, I'm not sharing my screen. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, so we looked at this budget cycle. Typically, FP&A teams would prepare it on a weekly basis, and they would prepare a Gantt chart like this, where it would be very clearly visible, okay, who is doing what and when that particular process. For example, the planning stage starts at the starting of week 1 and it ends at the beginning of the second month in September. Okay, the execution stage starts in week 3 and then it ends in end of September. Okay, so at some point there is planning and execution happening parallelly. Similarly, the consolidation review starts in week 3 and it ends at the end of October. At some point, the consolidation and the budget preparation is also happening parallelly. Okay, and there are reviews that happen with the different. So in many organizations, what happens is there are reviews at different levels. It could be reviews by the country team, then it could be by the regional team, and then by the corporate, wherever there's a regional setup and the country setup, or it could be department reviews and then the final reviews by the CEO and the CFO. So there are usually multiple layers of reviews that happen, at least two to three, and that's why you require a lot of time for those reviews to be done over the period of maybe 2 to 3 weeks. Okay, and then finally in November we already saw that last week of right by last week of mid of November the CEO reviews needed to happen. So that is what the November month is. Okay, so let me go to the next. I'll take the questions at the end. Let me cover the remaining part of the session today, and we will have time. I'm just looking at the clock. We'll have time for Q&A at the end. So we looked at the planning stage. Next is the execution stage, which is followed by consolidation review. So we'll talk about the execution stage. So execution stage starts with sharing the budget templates. The example that we just looked at, you would cut out those templates if you're working in Excel. If you're a mid-sized organization, most of them work in Excel. So we'll cut out those templates and you'll send it to the different teams, and you will explain to them, train them how to fill up those templates, and hopefully in a period of 1 or 2 weeks they will send back the updated templates to you, and then go and you will be consolidating. You will be ready to review the templates and then consolidate. Okay, I'll go back to the template just to show you some more examples. Okay, so let me take an example of one particular sales manager. Let me take again example of Alfredo in this case. Okay, so let's say that I have given this template. I am the FP&A manager, and I have given this template to one of the sales director or the sales manager who is Alfredo. And what I'm giving Alfredo is I'm giving Alfredo the previous year volume numbers. Okay, what was the volume ordered by him in terms of his products that he was managing, or the channels that he was managing. So I'm giving him the data of the previous year, and also I'm giving him not just the volume data, but I'm also giving him the pricing and the revenue data of the previous year. Okay, so now looking at the previous year data, what I would expect Alfredo to do, and this is just an example of one sales manager. This will happen with every team or every sales manager in the organization. Okay, so what do you think? Let me know in the chat box. What will Alfredo do with this template? What do you think he will do? Let me know in the chat box. So once you've given this template to the sales team, what would they be doing with this template? Can somebody let me know in the chat box, especially those who have worked in the budget before? Okay, you've given this template to the sales team, and now what will the sales team do with this? Okay, whatever comes to your mind, let me know in the chat box. Okay, the sales team should provide the budget for the next 12 months. Obviously, that is the objective. Okay, analyze the past data, make new numbers for the next year based on their plans. Okay, so let's say for example, in based on the chat box, as mentioned. Okay, so Alfredo. Okay, update if any changes. Okay, so what as per he will update the expected volume per month. Okay, all right. So what you're saying in the chat box, I'll just translate that in the numbers on the screen. Okay, so Alfredo, who's the sales manager, will look at this template, and he'll look at the past year data. Okay, he'll look at, okay, this is what I had ordered in the previous year, or I had ordered, meaning the clients who are working with Alfredo had ordered from the company. Alfredo is just a sales representative, right? So he has some clients, and the clients are ordering these uh, these products, and they had ordered this in the previous year. Amir is saying he will review the prior data, volume, value, budget, and provide the next year target plan. Okay. So do you think Alfredo will himself review the data and just send you the numbers based on his estimate? Okay, he looked at the last year data. For example, Alfredo looks at this. Okay. For example, Alfredo looks at one of the product, which is say the ice cream sandwich product. Okay, and he looks at ice cream sandwich product, and he looks at it and he says, okay, last year we had ordered 777 seven I had ordered 787 cases of ice creams sandwiches. Okay, let me just make a random estimate based on that, and I would put in some numbers here, and then I'll submit it. Would that happen? Okay, this is what you are saying, right? You are saying that you will look at the previous year data and make some estimates for the next year, and then give back the template. Okay, would that happen, or would it be something more? Okay, so it may not be the case that Alfredo is filling these numbers himself. Okay, what would likely happen in many cases is Alfredo will go back and look at this data. I'll again open this data once again. Yeah, I'll filter the salesperson. Yeah, he will involve the team members. Okay, not just the team members, he will also involve his clients in this decision. Okay, So what if I am in, let's assume that I am Alfredo, what I will do is I'll look at this template and I will say, okay, these are my customers. I'll go to column G where it names my customers. Okay, so these are the customers that Alfredo is responsible for managing, or he will reach out to the client. So Alfredo has three different clients: KFC, Tasty Kitchen, and there's something called Ahmedabad store. So Alfredo will look at Ahmedabad store. Okay, Alfredo will look at Ahmedabad store, and Alfredo will look at the Ahmedabad store data. And Ahmedabad store had not ordered anything last year. Okay, it is quite possible that Ahmedabad store had just entered into a contract at the end of last year, and they are just in the process of signing the contract, and that's why the template has that. So Alfredo will reach out to the Ahmedabad store. He doesn't have any historical data. He will reach out to his representative and he will ask him, okay, what are your expected orders for this year from the Ahmedabad store? His representative will let him know, we've just opened the store and we don't expect any orders. Maybe 2 months will just take in the renovation and making the furniture and all. We expect to open the store in March. So from March onwards, you can expect some orders. However, right. So then the next question Alfredo will ask, okay, you will be ordering from March. Tell me how many quantities of ice cream will you be ordering? How many quantities of sandwich ice cream will be ordering? And then the Ahmedabad store will tell him a reasonable estimate, and then he will use that to update the template. Okay, so he'll do that for every store. Let's take another example. Let's say second store is KFC. He'll again look at the past data. Here he is having historical data, so he knows historically they ordered 767 cases. He'll go back to the KFC point of contact and he's asking. He will tell him that you have been ordering about 46 to 50, about 40-50 cases every month. What do you expect to do next year, right? And the KFC person might tell them, okay, we expect that to continue and you can continue the December number for the next 12 months if that is the case. Or he might tell you, okay, next 3 months we will order the same, and from April onwards we are planning to expand our store capacity. We are planning to expand our put our square feet, or we're planning to make the store bigger. We'll need more. Okay, whatever the discussion is, Alfredo will involve the clients and get the template updated, and then come back to the FP&A team. Okay, again, this is an example. In most cases, you will be they will be interacting with some other people outside the organization, especially for the revenue side. Okay, in many companies, it could be CRMs, it could be pipeline, sales pipeline that they could use, which will give them the data where they need to update all of this information based on the historical pipeline. What are the leads that they have? What is the normal lead to conversion ratio? Based on all of that information, they will fill up the template and then give it back to you. Okay, there's one comment. There will be definitely new targets for 2025 aside from the regular volume, which has to, so that will be there. So once every sales manager submits the templates, right? They will FP&A finance team will consolidate it, and they will look at the total revenue number, and then they'll compare with the bottoms up and that right, in this case the top down target, if it is matching. If not, then there will be definitely more that will be given to the teams. Okay, there's another comment from somebody. If firstly they can monitor the trend, secondly they may understand market changes, and also look to drive going to corporate in the lower target areas. Look into the drives to going into the. Okay, all right, so that is what I wanted to share. Let me go back to the slides. Okay, so we talked about the budget template sharing and what happens, right? As an example, in most companies, when you share the budget templates, it usually uh, the business teams will update those templates and they would come back to you, and then you will. So it will not be the case that you've given them the template on, say, for example, we looked at the calendar, right? Say, for example, you've given them the template in first week of September. It is not that you will give them the templates in first week of September and give them the date of 30th of September and they will submit the templates on 30th of September, right? That rarely happens. Okay, so what usually would happen is you may need regular check-ins with the business teams. Okay, so for example, on 1st of September, you have submitted the budget template. You will have to have a check-in at the end of week one, at the end of week two, at the end of week three to monitor the progress. Okay, we have submitted the template to 20 different teams. Okay, how many teams have filled it after the end of week one? We'll say, okay, out of the 20 teams, 7 teams have filled it by the end of week one, 13 teams are yet in progress. Okay, at the end of week two, maybe another 5 teams you'll have maybe 12 teams submission and 8 will be pending. Okay, you'll have to now reach out to those eight teams. What are the challenges they are facing? Why they have not submitted so far? Are they stuck anywhere, right? Do they need some training? Do they need some help? Okay, so there has to be checkpoints in between the time you have given them the templates and the time when you're expecting the templates back. You cannot expect them to give them the template and then suddenly on the 29th of September send them a reminder that I sent you the template on the 1st of September with the due date of 30th of September, and tomorrow the template is due. Could you please send me? That usually never happens. You'll have to have weekly checkpoints to be able to make sure that the teams are able to properly update those templates and they're not facing any issues. Sometimes you may have to train them to how to update the template. They may not know where to get the data from. They may not know how to operate right certain functionalities in the planning tool if they're working on the planning tool. I need to make sure that you take into consideration all of that. Okay, so we talked about the we talked about the budget template sharing. We talked about the meetings and the communication that we have to communicate expectations at every point of time. So if you're giving the template on the 1st September and you expect the templates on 30th of September, you will have to make sure that they are monitored on a weekly basis or on a frequent basis. After all of that happens, 30th of September, out of the 20 teams, 18 or 19 teams have submitted the template, and you have the data for most of the teams, right? For most of the teams. Once you have the templates ready, you have completed the execution stage. Now you move to the consolidation and the review stage. Okay, we already looked at the sample example. Okay. So we looked at the planning stage, we looked at the execution stage. Planning stage was budget guidelines and budget timelines and calendar. We looked at that in detail. Budget execution was sharing the budget templates, making sure that the communication happens on a frequent basis between the business team and the finance team. And at the end of the execution phase, you should have all the templates with you, which are ready for you to review and then consolidate. Once you have those templates, you move to the review and the consolidation stage. What happens in the review and the consolidation stage? Very simple. If you have templates from 20 different teams or 15 different departments, you will consolidate them, which is what happens in the consolidation tool or the FP&A tool or in some companies in Excel. Okay? You will make sure that you look at the submissions in very much detail, see the movements over the previous year, what are the movements happening. If there are big changes, you make sure that you understand why those changes are happening. Okay, you understand the reason for the variance. You understand what are those expenses. Assume that the CFO will be asking you or the CEO will be asking you a lot of questions on those budget numbers, and you have to yourself be very sure about what those numbers are and why are those numbers different from the previous year. Okay? So you'll have to make sure that you understand them well. Okay? In many cases, you will have to give some proactive guidance to the business. In many cases, they might forget to add some budget expenses that they had done in the previous year, which you can tell them, okay, you had this event in the last year where you had spent $50,000. You've not included that in the current year budget, but do you think that event will happen in the next year? And they might say, yes, that event will definitely happen. I have missed it. Let me add it back and give you a revised one. Okay, so you'll have to look at the template, looking at the historical numbers, and then give them some proactive guidance if they've missed anything that you think could have been missed. Okay. So what happens usually is when you do from August to December, right? There are different versions that created. So you start with version 1 and then you end up with version 200, right? And at the end of November, the budget, whatever is reviewed by the CEO, that gets presented to the board, which is the final version, and that gets locked in the system. And then you can use that for the comparison for the next financial year. Okay, when you move to the next financial year, you can use that budget as your target also and as a point of comparison for your actual numbers as well. Okay, so that is the consolidation and review phase. You consolidate different department budgets. It gets reviewed by the teams. Then any adjustments happen. Then after the FP&A team reviews, the head or the CFO might review it. Yes, or the FP&A lead might review it, and it might go to the CFO, and then finally it goes to the CEO and the board where it is updated and where it is reviewed and approved by the board. So this is what happens in the consolidation and the review phase. Okay. So that is what we have looked at in the last, I would say, 25 to 30 minutes, the different phases of the budget cycle, right from the planning stage to the execution stage to the consolidation and the review stage. Okay. So let me see what is next. Okay. We talked about the planning and execution. Okay, again, planning, execution, and consolidation. So there are 10 steps overall. So in the planning stage, we had 2 steps: budget guidelines and budget calendar and timelines. And in the execution stage, we talked about templates, we talked about regular communication, we talked about department sending back the templates. In the execution, in the consolidation stage, we talked about departments consolidate teams consolidating department budgets, getting it reviewed at different levels, right from FP&A manager to CFO, and then finally by the CEO and the board. Okay. Now we talked about the different stages in the budgeting cycle. right from planning, execution to consolidation. It is also important to look at the different parts of the budget, very similar to a income statement or a P&L. Okay, you work on the revenue budget. We saw one of the example of the revenue budget template also earlier today. Then you worked on production and inventory budget. You look at the cost of goods sold budget, including materials, labor, manufacturing overheads in a manufacturing organization on a product based company. Okay, then you look together, all of this is cost of goods sold budget. Then you have marketing budget, sales budget, headcount and salaries budget, administration budget, and R&D budget. So these are usually the main parts of the P&L budget. And on the balance sheet side, you have something called capex budget and the inventory budget, which are important parts in a manufacturing organization. So you work on each of these items one by one. I would say in a big organization, it would be happening parallelly. Some person might be responsible for the revenue side, some person might be responsible for the production budget, some person might be responsible for the headcount budget. So depending on the size of the organization, you'll have different people working on different areas, or if it's a small organization, then it might be the one or two people who might be working on all the areas. Okay, so that is what I had to share today. So what I will do is I'll take a pause, see if there are comments and questions in the chat box. Okay, could you please share the, yeah, I'll be sharing the template with you once I finish the webinar. It'll happen in the next 15 minutes. I'll share the template with you. Okay. Please tell about FP&A profile in Big Four like audits, so like Deloitte. Okay. So in Big Fours, what happens is usually there are two kinds of roles. One could be the FP&A role for the Big Four itself, meaning Big Four is the organization, and you are doing FP&A for the different services that the Big Four performs, right? So you could be looking at the audit service line, or you could be looking at the tax service line, or you could be looking at the transaction service line, and you are doing the FP&A for the or you're doing the planning or budgeting forecasting for the different departments in the Big Four, which I talked about. Okay, that could be one type of a role. Okay, another type of a role is where Big Four is hiring for one of their clients. Okay, the Deloitte has 25 different clients who need FA support services, and then you are working for one of those clients. So it could be either of the two roles. Either you are doing the FP&A for the Big Four itself, or it could be you're working for one of the clients of the Big Four. So make sure that you understand the role before you get into it. Yeah, recording is being done, so it will be shared. Usually, it gets shared on our FP&A Institute YouTube channel. It comes in 1 or 2 days after the session is done. Okay, so I'll share the YouTube channel link also where you can find the recordings later on. Okay. All right. So maybe I'll just take 1 or 2 minutes and talk about one of our in real life why they are stressing on P&L like traveling, SG&A. Some are only stressing on revenue. Please explain. Okay. So it is not like that. So if you are working in the travel and the SG&A part, then you are probably responsible for that area. There might be somebody else who might be responsible for revenue area which you may not be aware of, or you may not be directly involved in, and they may not want everybody to see the revenue numbers in the company. So that could also be the reason. So it could be because of you are working in one particular area or one particular part of the budget. That's why. So I have seen so many people just in a multi-billion dollar organization. There are three people who are looking only at the travel budget and the I would say the meeting budget, or the hotel and the flight, right? Cost. So that could also be the case. Okay. So I'll talk about five critical skills that usually CFOs are looking for. So core FP&A concept, financial modeling, data storytelling, business partnering, and nowadays AI knowledge and how you can leverage AI to be able to speed up your work or do things faster. So these are the core skills that many CFOs usually look for. And what I would say is CGFP is our program where we try to bring in all of those skills in one certification. I'll not get into a lot of detail. So it's a global certification recognized, one of the top, I would say, top five, top six globally recognized FP&A certification. You learn from any leaders, you learn from CFOs, you learn from guest speakers who come in on our institute on a monthly basis. There are 10 comprehensive modules, which I'll quickly talk about in the next few seconds. You become a part of the global alumni community. If you require, there is personalized session with a coach. You get placement assistance in terms of getting your resume reviewed, getting mock interviews done. You get access to our in-house jobs board. There are monthly guest sessions that happens, Q&A calls that happen, and then you have access to our LMS and all the materials to refer to after the program is over. So I'll quickly talk about the different modules of the CGFP program. So you have budgeting, forecasting, AI, finance and FP&A, management reporting, financial modeling, introduction to data analytics, financial analytics, and storytelling and presentation. So strategy and business partnering. So these are 10 modules that I talked about, which we cover in the CGFPA program. And the eligibility criteria is you need a bachelor's degree qualification, or you should be a CMA or an equivalent to be able to be eligible for the certification. It is usually happening live every quarter. So we have a cohort starting every quarter. The next cohort starts end of September, and the applications are actually already closed on 10th of, I think it closed on the 10th of September. However, you could still fill up the application form, and if there are, I would say, deferrals, or if somebody moves to the next batch, or somebody withdraws from the program for some reason, then you could be getting into the September cohort. But still, you should, if you are interested, you should definitely fill up the application form. Okay, so it's the orientation happened on 6th of September, and the classes are starting on 27th of September, and the next cohort will be in January 2026. Okay, what I'll do is I'll share the CDFPA details in the chat box. In case you are interested, you should definitely check out the program. And there we usually cover a lot of examples like what I showed you today in a lot of detail with real life examples and data. Okay, so let me just bring up the link and I'll share that in the chat box.